Brian, we think about pastoral ministry, what we think it is and how we execute it comes often from the people who invested in us. And so there's a significant person in your life who invested in you. And a really great story. Why don't you tell folks about?
This guy named Jackson Boyette pastored in Austin, Texas. He planted a church, pastored it for 33 years. And God's kind providence just brought him in my life. The first year I was at Auburndale, and many people know my story and how rough it was and all the difficulties we faced. And God just put this man in my life to be an older man and counselor and somebody to really pastor me through that. And that's what Jackson did. He did that for about 8.5 years, through some of those really hard years. And then he and his wife were killed by drunk drivers about 9 years ago. And that was a devastating loss. But what it has done, it has reminded me of how important he was to me, what it meant to have somebody like that. And of course, with the work of Practical Shepherding, it's reminded me on how important it is that what we're doing, what we're trying to care for pastors, because I received such great care from him in that. You've got Paul that wrote to Timothy, that's right. Yeah, and said, pass this on to the next generation. That's really what we want to be about, really what this field guide is meant to be about. And for you too, James, I mean, in your pastoral ministry, and you've had some men that have impacted you as well.
Right, yeah, there are two specifically. I mean, there are lots of men, but two specifically come to mind. The guy who was my pastor in high school and in college and invested in me in those formative years. And then my first ministry position was in a residency program where the man's job was to invest in us, and of course he did that. And he died several years ago, but there's still situations I respond to and things that I do that are a direct result of the way he invested in me. And a beautiful picture of that. And that's really with this resource, the field guide. What we're hoping to do is not just give content that comes out of our ministry or our experience, but really give a platform for guys to invest in others and really cull or draw out wisdom from them that can be passed along to those they're investing in.
Yeah, the whole purpose of this field guide is not to train these guys, and we can't do that through a book, right, or even these videos, but we can help. We can create a template and the material for a pastor to take his own guys through this, or his own elders, pastors he serves with, or his staff, or whatever it is. And so that's really what this is meant to do, to be a template, and to be a template in the areas that seminaries really don't teach, that pastors have to know, this practical side of real ministry. Seminaries theologically train people well, but they don't train often in the practical side. And so not only do we want to do that, we want to kind of just hand this to a pastor and say, you now go train your guys. We know that most pastors can't create that kind of curriculum material. So we've done that. That's what these videos are supposed to do, and hopefully empower them to pour into the guys they know better than we do. They're going to be able to adjust the things we're talking about around their church situation and the different guys that are a part of this. Some of them are going to be weaker in other areas and stronger in other areas. So the goal is for them to not just kind of blindly approach this field guide, but to actually use it as a way to adjust it for their own guys, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we've gathered some resources, and then we're hoping to get the conversation started. Yeah. But hopefully it's not the end of the conversation, but actually the beginning of it. Because pastoral ministry is really passed like a baton from one man to the next. And while we're standing on the shoulders of centuries of solid pastors, there's a sense in which in each generation you pass that baton on to the next generation. And we want to facilitate that among different pastors and the ones they're training.
Yeah, and we also want to acknowledge that we want to facilitate this for pastors who are looking to take their guys through whoever they want to train. We've also carefully written this, though, in a way that a pastor's by himself in some rural church, pastoring 50 people. He has no support, no one to pastor him. Obviously, that's the people Practical Shepherding wants to reach out and help in many ways. But this resource is also designed for them to go through the training without maybe having somebody to take it through them. We're going to try to play that role for them.
Yeah, it's not the ideal situation,
right?
But even in that circumstance, yeah, we hope it's helpful.
Yeah, so I think to keep in mind when Paul writes to Timothy, there is this clear idea of older pastors mentoring younger pastors, teaching them and training them, and the context of that is to the doctrine, the truth of the gospel is to be carried on to the next generation. That's all carried even to this moment, but every one of us now has to consider who are we going to invest in to continue on that legacy that Paul writes to Timothy. That's what we're trying to provide with a resource like this.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.